Hi everybody, bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to the second of two cooking sessions today for the beginning of the Summerfest and Dinipalooza in the Cavern. Bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien. Je vous rejoins pour la deuxième de deux sessions de cuisine pour commencer le festival de l'été en caverne et le Dinipalooza, donc festival de musique qu'on est en train de faire ensemble. Donc, je veux juste un petit bonjour dans la caverne. So, thumbs up in cavern if you can hear me. Donc, si vous m'entendez, juste me laisser savoir. Tout devrait bien aller puisque j'ai les mêmes informations que j'avais tantôt. Je pense que tout est beau. Do you hear me? Does everybody hear me? Ah, perfect. Can hear. Thank you, Bat Prad. All right, so we are good. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be doing a similar recipe to what we did today. Donc, comme j'ai mentionné tantôt, on va faire une recette qui ressemble à la recette qu'on a faite aujourd'hui. So first off, I just want to show you my beautiful flowers that I went and picked in the garden today. It's full on summer right here in Quebec right now. So I went in my garden, I picked a little assortment of flowers and fruits and vegetables from my garden just to decorate a little bit in the kitchen. So I just want to show you that before we get started with our recipe. It's been really crazy hot here, so I have decided to do a recipe that's a little bit on the cool, refreshing side. So we're going to be doing a tartare. And as you saw at the beginning of the video, I did do a salmon tartare earlier, but I'm going to change things up a little bit and do the same recipe with tuna. So we're just going to change things a little bit. Donc, je vous présente mon petit bouquet de fleurs d'été. Je suis allée dans le jardin plus tôt pour aller cueillir des fleurs. Donc, j'ai une petite combinaison fleurs, fruits et légumes qui viennent directement de mon jardin. Tout est en floraison en ce moment. Les fruits sont en train de pousser, les légumes sont en train de pousser. Et on est en train de finir 2 semaines de canicule, de chaleur ici au Québec. Donc, j'ai décidé de faire une recette un petit peu plus rafraîchissante pour vous. Pas trop de cuisson. Donc, vous avez vu peut-être au début de la diffusion que les titres ont changé. Cet après-midi, j'ai fait un tartare de saumon. Donc, ce soir, pour changer légèrement, on va faire la même recette, mais avec du thon. Donc, je vais mettre mes fleurs de côté et on va commencer la recette. So, I'm just going to put these flowers to the side, remove my tablecloth, and we're going to start with the recipe. So, I was talking a little bit about the fact that here in Quebec, we have this sort of wonderful love for tartare. It's something that kind of came into popularity, I think, with the advent of sushi, and people were discovering and enjoying raw fish. And so we now have a culture that really enjoys eating raw fish in tartare, in sushi, and also in poke bowls. And so in the grocery stores, you can get a lot of these products pre-prepared for you to make it easier to be able to create these dishes at home. So I picked up a little assortment of some of these products to show you. Donc, j'explique que ici au Québec, depuis à peu près 10-15 ans, nous avons vraiment une culture qui est intéressée au sushi, aux tartares et surtout les tartares faits maison. Donc, on voit vraiment dans les épiceries que les compagnies ont pris cette idée et ont créé des produits pour pouvoir justement faire des plats un petit peu plus faciles à la maison. Donc, on peut trouver maintenant dans les épiceries, dans les marchés de grande surface, des produits comme ça. Donc, comme j'ai expliqué, j'ai fait du thon. Donc, on peut acheter des portions de thon déjà congelées dans les épiceries pour pouvoir trancher, soit pour faire nos sushis ou bien nos tartares. On peut aussi acheter, si on ne veut pas faire le travail avec le couteau et où on ne veut pas non plus avoir le risque d'avoir un produit qui est un petit peu trop gros, coupé grossièrement. On peut acheter des produits qui sont déjà préparés. Donc ici, j'ai un un tartare de thon qui est déjà coupé. Il n'y a aucun autre ingrédient sauf le poisson ici dans le sachet, mais c'est déjà taillé pour nous, donc aucun de problème pour pouvoir préparer. These are products that I bought at the grocery store. So these are companies that have started creating these products that are sold frozen, but they're frozen directly from when they're fished and trimmed. So they're safe to defrost in a refrigerator for a couple of hours until the flesh is nice and soft, and then we can trim them to make tartare or sushi or poke bowls. So this one here is just the nice rectangle piece of tuna that you can cut up in slices to make sushi or onigiri poke bowls. And you can also buy the product which is also cut up already for making tartare. So this one is labeled as a tuna tartare. So I'm going to show you how I want to trim my tuna to make the tartare. I'm going to grab a bowl. So I'm going to put all of my ingredients in here. And I'm going to work on this plastic cutting board. I don't work on my wooden cutting board because I don't want to cross-contaminate with the fruits and vegetables that I might be trimming later on. And so this one is much easier to cut. If you have a dishwasher, this is also a good, it's a good way to disinfect the board afterwards, rather than a wooden board, which is not recommended to put in the dishwasher. So, je coupe mon thon sur une planche en plastique. La raison que je fais ça, c'est parce que je ne veux pas contaminer ma planche en bois et contaminer les produits que je vais trancher sur la planche en bois par après. La planche en plastique, je peux le mettre directement dans la lave-vaisselle pour le laver à une haute température pour ne pas avoir une contamination avec les fruits et légumes. Glass board, I do not recommend. Wholeheartedly, I do not recommend you ever use a glass board. A glass board is actually very bad for your knives. It will ruin the blade of the knife. You either go for plastic or you go for wood. Those two materials are materials that are softer, so they're going to give way under the knife. And so you will be damaging the blade of your knife a lot less, whereas a glass board is such a very hard surface. It's actually going to be damaging the edge of your knife, and your knives are going to become much more blunt quickly. So, Iwan qui est en train de demander si on peut utiliser une planche en vitre, que oui, j'ai déjà vu, et on vend ça souvent dans les magasins. Il y en a beaucoup qui l'ont à la maison, c'est bon pour le nettoyage, mais pour utiliser un couteau sur une planche en vitre, je ne suggérerais jamais, puisque c'est un matériel qui est très dur. Ça va endommager la lame du couteau et ça va devenir... vous allez avoir des petites coupures ici dans la lame. Il faudra le faire aiguiser beaucoup plus souvent, tandis qu'une planche en plastique ou une planche en bois, c'est un matériel qui est un petit peu plus doux. Et à ce moment-là, quand vous coupez, vous rentrez légèrement dans le plastique au lieu de le matériel de la planche qui est en train de rentrer dans votre lame. Donc, vous voulez vraiment plastique ou bois. Pour les poissons, les fruits de mer, les poulets, le bœuf, dans le fond, n'importe quoi qui est viande, j'irais plutôt pour une planche en plastique. Et pour toutes les autres choses, j'irais pour une planche en bois. So I would always suggest having separate boards for your meats and your fishes, and then for your vegetables and fruits, so that you don't have that cross-contamination. So I've got my piece of tuna here, and I'm going to, since it's in a nice square, it's going to be really easy to cut. Now I have a really nice sharp knife. I'm going to cut first of all slices. These are going to be about 1/2 inch. And I notice that it already has a little bit of a diagonal slice to it, but that's just the way that the flesh is going. So I'm going to make nice long cuts in this, and then from those cuts I'm going to make strips, and then I'm going to cut that into a dice. So I'm going to cut this long. Donc premièrement, je coupe des tranches d'à peu près, je dirais 7 à 8 mm de largeur, donc pas autant qu'un centimètre, légèrement moins grand. Et je vais maintenant prendre ces tranches-là, les couper en bâtonnets et ensuite couper les bâtonnets en cubes. Donc je veux avoir des morceaux qui sont agréables à manger. Je ne veux pas avoir des gros morceaux, ça c'est important. Vous ne voulez pas avoir des gros cubes dans votre tartare, puisque la texture va être un petit peu plus désagréable à manger. voulez pas avoir à mâcher dans un gros morceau de poisson cru. Tandis que si vous faites des petits cubes, tous les ingrédients vont bien mélanger ensemble. Ça va faire une texture vraiment bien mélangée et agréable à déguster. So you want to cut your cubes a little bit smaller. You don't want big cubes of fish because the texture is going to be a little bit chewy to be eating. It's more bleached than the salmon meat. That's true. Well, a tuna fish has a little bit of a different color to it, and actually if you notice, with the two different kinds of tuna that I'm working with, this one here is a lot more pink, this one here is a lot more dark. It all depends on the section of the tuna that you're taking it from and the kind of tuna that you're using. This one here is a farm tuna, whereas the one that's in the bag is listed as being wild caught. So it would be the equivalent of having your white meat and your dark meat on a chicken. So this one here is a little bit more on the pink side, whereas this one here is a little bit darker. Donc la viande paraît un petit peu plus rosée ici, celui que je suis en train de couper sur la planche, comparé à la viande que j'ai dans le petit sachet. J'explique que la viande ici, c'est un ton qui est élevé, un ton d'élevage, donc ça bouge un petit peu moins et ça fait bouger aussi les muscles un petit peu moins qui font en sorte que la viande est plus pâle en couleur. Tandis que celui qui est dans le sachet ici, c'est une viande qui est de produits sauvages, qui veut dire que les muscles sont travaillés un petit peu plus et ça fait en sorte que la viande est légèrement plus foncée en couleur. Ça peut aussi changer le goût de la viande. On verra ça après, puisque j'ai les deux, je peux faire la comparaison. Mais pour l'instant, je vais juste finir de couper mon thon en cubes. So for the time being, I'm just going to finish cutting up this nice block of tuna here. This is the last one. Donc la même chose ici. C'est intéressant que les morceaux sont en train de se défaire naturellement. So I'm just noticing that the salmon itself, or the tuna, is actually coming apart just a little bit as I'm cutting it here on the diagonal. So there we go. So there's our tuna, and I'm just going to show you this one. We might mix a little bit of that into the package. I recommend a wooden cutting board for fruits and vegetables over plastic. So I think a wooden cutting board is more of a personal preference. If you prefer a plastic one, by all means go with that. I like the feel and texture of a wooden cutting board, and I find it reacts better to my knives, if I can put it that way. You can also get much larger cutting boards, whereas the plastic ones tend to be all these little small skinny ones that move all over the place. I would definitely recommend a wooden cutting board for fruits and vegetables. Like I said, I would not recommend one for meats. I just prefer the washability of a plastic one for that. The one thing that I would not cut on a wooden cutting board in terms of vegetables would be chilies, hot peppers, because all of the spicy oils will get into the board. And then the next things that you cut on your wooden cutting board are going to be spicy. So you can think about if you cut some chilies and then you cut some apples, those apples are going to be burning your lips. So yeah. So this is the tuna that I was talking about here. Like I said, this one is already pre-cut, but I actually have to kind of take it apart. And the cubes are not really nicely separated, so it's a good product for like in a pinch, or if you really don't trust your knife skills. But honestly, I think I would prefer this texture that I have here over the texture that I'm getting in that bowl there. Of course, once you start mixing it with the other ingredients, it won't be as noticeable, I don't think. But I'm going to break this one up anyways because I do have to use it, so I'm going to probably mix both of these batches up and test the flavors side by side. So we're just going to... Donc, vous voyez la texture du tartare de saumon que j'ai acheté préalablement coupé en magasin. Est légèrement plus fin. Les morceaux sont vraiment plus petits, mais ça a l'air un petit peu plus déchiqueté comparé à mes cubes à moi qui sont un petit peu plus en cubes. Je préfère personnellement la texture que je vois ici, mais j'ai les deux viandes de toute façon, donc je vais quand même les préparer. Et je vais pouvoir déguster et voir la différence entre les deux produits. Donc, je mets les deux balles ici. On peut garder la différence. Wooden ones and real plastic ones still sweat plastic products. Oh, yeah, that's true. If you don't really like the stuff that might be in the plastic boards, for sure, you could absolutely use just the wooden ones. At that point, you just make sure that you kind of distinguish which boards are for meats and which boards are for vegetables, so that way you wouldn't... Wooden ones can bend. Yeah, that's it. Now, wooden boards are always a little bit more like a living thing. You have to kind of treat them properly. You have to keep them properly oiled and keep them not standing up because they will bend a little bit, depending on the thickness of the board too. If you have a particularly thick wooden board, it's not going to bend as much. So I'm just washing off my knife. Je suis en train de laver mon couteau ici pour enlever les restes de poisson et pouvoir tailler mes légumes maintenant. Et je vais vous apporter la planche en bois. So I'm bringing over my board with my utensils and the ingredients. Grab another spoon for the second bowl. Here we go. So, in a salmon tartare, or a tuna tartare in this case, we're going to add some flavors. So, I want to add some acidity, so I have some lemons, but I'm also going to do one with lime. So we're going to do lime in these ones now. I want a little bit of crunch, so we want something kind of tangy and acidic, but fresh at the same time. So I'm going with green apple. So I'm going to move these guys out of the side, and we're going to have enough with just that one lime. So when you do with salmon, the lemon juice is more is better paired with the salmon because the salmon is a much more fatty flesh, so you want something really tangy. The lime has a little bit more of a bitterness to it, and since I'm going to be doing ingredients that are more Asian inspired here, I'm going to go more with the lime. You can use chives, which I used this afternoon, but I'm going to go with some green onion in these ones, give it a little bit more of a tang. And to finish everything off, I'm going to add a little bit of creaminess with an avocado. So, to start, we're going to add our green onion. So I'm just going to take off the extra leaf on the outside there. Donc pour mes aromates que je vais rajouter dans mes tartares, je vais utiliser des oignons verts ou bien des échalotes. On peut aussi utiliser de la ciboulette. C'est ça que j'ai utilisé avec le saumon cet après-midi. Je vais rajouter un petit peu de croustillant. Excuse-moi. Un peu de croustillant et acidité. Donc je vais rajouter zeste et jus de lime. Et je vais aussi rajouter des dés de pommes vertes. Donc ça, c'est une pomme Granny Smith. Vous pouvez utiliser n'importe quelle sorte de pomme que vous avez qui est légèrement acidulée au niveau du goût. Et pour rajouter un petit côté crémeuse, un avocat qu'on va mettre à la fin. Assaisonnement, je vais avoir sauce soya à la place de mon sel, du poivre noir, ici, et des graines de sésame pour le croustillant. Donnez-moi juste un instant, give me just 1 second. I have a critter that's trying to get in the way here. She's trying to get my fish. Sorry about that. I was just about to have a cat in the bowl of tuna, which would have been really great. So, désolée pour l'interruption. J'avais un chat qui allait se planter le visage dans mon bol de thon. C'est pas recommandé. Donc, je vais maintenant couper un petit peu les oignons verts ici, tranchés finement. Et je suis en train de faire les quantités pour les deux bols en même temps. So I'm doing the quantity for the two bowls at the same time. So I'm going to thinly slice my green onions. Yeah, no cooking the cat, but I also don't want the cat to share in my meal. So the cat is now safely locked away in the bedroom, at least for the duration of the cooking stream. Alright, and I think that's going to be enough of that. I'm going to put these guys aside for something else. Just mix that up a little bit. So I noticed you were asking about how to clean a wooden cutting board. Just soap and water is the best way to do it. And just a good sponge to kind of scrub at the surface to be able to get all of the extra little bits and pieces of stuff out of it. Alright, we have our line here. We'll do the apple next. So I'm adding about a half an apple to each of these quantities. There's about 250 grams of tuna in each of the bowls. The recipe is about 400 grams, so you would use the entire apple, but I'm going to put half in each of these. So pour la quantité de thon que j'ai dans mes beuls, ça sera un total d'à peu près 450-500 grammes. En ce moment, j'ai à peu près 250 dans chaque bol. Je mettrai la pomme complète pour la recette. Mais puisque j'ai divisé ça en deux, je vais mettre demi-pomme dans chaque. And important, when you put in your apple and other things, you want the pieces to be relatively small so they mix into the tuna properly. So the apple pieces that I'm going to be cutting are actually going to be much smaller than the tuna cubes that I already cut. No, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just kind of slowly go at it. You don't have to, it's not a race. You don't have to speed through the cutting of the apple. Just slice little cubes. There we go. Donc, c'est pas une course. Pendant que je coupe la pomme ici, j'ai pas besoin d'y aller trop vite. Je prends mon temps, je coupe mes cubes comme il faut. Je veux des cubes qui sont plus petits. Donc, je vais travailler pour faire vraiment des belles petites cubes de pommes. Voilà. Same thing here. I'm going to cut this apple. So do you all have a lot of tartare available either in grocery stores? Do you have products like this for making sushi and stuff that you would be able to use to create tartare at home? Sushi grade fish or fishmongers that can prepare this kind of stuff for you? Have you noticed that they have some of this kind of stuff in the grocery stores at all? Or is this really a purely Québécois thing? I know I was talking to Onzin earlier who mentioned that in France it's not something that's necessarily quite that big. Of course they do like regular beef tartare, but that's usually available in grocery store, or not grocery, in restaurants. So in little bistros and stuff you can get your beef tartare. But fish tartare is maybe a little less popular. But I imagine there's a lot of fish products everywhere because there's a lot of sushi. A lot of people who are making sushi at home. Or do you not really make sushi at home either? You do more takeout? Is it maybe too much work to make sushi? Okay. So when you're talking prepackaged sushi, you mean like the rolls that are already pre-done in the store that you buy in the package and you just bring home with your little wooden chopsticks and you eat those? Not the like packages of fish things. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we have that here too. But usually in the grocery stores they're accompanied by a actual sushi counter. And so the sushi that they're making there is done fresh that day because you see the person making it in the morning. And by the end of the day, the counter is empty because the person who is making the sushi has gone home for the day. So that one's pretty well a given that the sushi in those grocery stores is fresh and not brought in. But I did work in a store where the sushi was pre-made by a company. and shipped into the grocery stores. But it was shipped in at the beginning of the week, and the dates on the packages were about 4 or 5 days in advance, which always surprised me, that the pieces of raw fish that some of them had in their packaging would last that long. I found that was rather curious. Those ones I didn't eat. Alright, so we've got our, I'm just going to clear these extra bits up here. There we go. We now have our apple, we have our green onion. Donc dans mes bols ici, j'ai la pomme, j'ai l'oignon vert. Je vais rouler ici la lime sur le comptoir. I'm just rolling my lime to kind of soften it up. I'm going to cut it in half, and see, I made a very big mistake there. Normally, I would have zested this before cutting it in half, and then I went ahead and cut it in half. So we're going to give ourselves an extra challenge. We're going to try and take the zest off of here without squeezing out too much of that juice. And then we're going to juice the lime. But normally, you would get the lime zest off of the lime and then cut it in half. So do as I say, don't do as I do. There we go. So there's a little bit of lime in that one. And then we'll do the same thing in the back one here. Zest that lime. Squeezing juice all over the place. Donc, important quand vous mettez le zeste de votre citron vert ou citron dans votre plat, attendez avant de le couper en deux, puisque vous allez maintenant avoir du jus un peu partout. Donc, prenez toujours le zeste avant de couper la lime en deux pour faire le jus. So now I've put my half a lime in there, and I'm going to squeeze that one in the first bowl. I'm going to flip this over and squeeze the second side just to make sure I get all the juice. And then I'll do the same thing in this one. There we go. I don't know about you, but I find that lime smells a lot more potent than lemon, especially when they're nice and fresh. And finally, I said we were going to add some avocado, so let's do that. And then we'll add the seasoning. Oh, this one's been in my fridge for a little while, so I'm hoping it's good. Je rajoute dernièrement un peu d'avocat pour donner un petit côté crémeux. Avec le saumon, je ne mettrai pas d'avocat parce que je trouve que le saumon est déjà assez gras, tandis que le thon est un petit peu, surtout celui-là, est un petit peu moins gras. Donc je veux rajouter ce gras-là au plat. Je suis juste en train d'éplucher l'avocat, puis ça marche pas. Go. It's not working that way, so I'm going to go this way with the spoon. That should help get that off of there a little bit better. For some reason this peel is really stuck. There we go. And this should come off too. It's very much stuck in the middle. There we go. Okay. Yeah, trying to avoid getting fingertip zest in the tuna is also a good thing. Another reason why you really want to zest your limes before you cut them in half. Donc une autre bonne raison de prélever le zeste avant de couper la lime en deux, c'est parce qu'on ne veut pas non plus prélever des zestes de nos bouts de doigts. Ça serait désagréable. So I'm just slicing this avocado into thin slices, and then I'm going to dice it about the same size as the apple. Donc l'avocat, je suis en train de couper en tranches minces et après ça en petits cubes à peu près la même grandeur que la pomme verte. And this one here, I'm going to go with the half per thing. There we go. This one too. This one's a little bit tougher. It's funny how sometimes avocados look really ripe and yet are not. This one here, for some reason, just not giving me that softness that I would expect from an avocado of this color. Donc, je trouve ça mélangeant des fois d'avoir un avocat qui est la coloraison d'un avocat qui est bien mûr. Mais quand je coupe dedans, ce n'est pas aussi molle que je m'attends à voir dans la chair. Voilà. Alright, so that's all of those. Now, we're going to add some seasonings. So normally a little bit of salt and pepper is in order. We're going to do pepper, for sure. And some pepper in the second bowl. And then instead of salt, we're going to do soy sauce. So this is where those Asian flavors are going to come in. So I'm going to do about a tablespoon, and I'm going to keep these here because I may want to adjust that seasoning afterwards. And then for a little bit of added crunch, we're going to add a little bit of sesame seeds. Now I'll probably put a little bit of that on top as a garnish afterwards. But for the time being, just a little bit of a sprinkle, so probably about a teaspoon of sesame seeds. And then the final thing, I like a little bit of spice. So we're going to add a little bit of this sweet and spicy hot sauce. And that's going to go in there. And again, I'm going to keep these aside because I'm going to want to taste these and make sure that they are properly seasoned. Given that the fish will always have a different flavor to it, I definitely want to make sure that the seasoning is right for the piece of fish that I used. Donc voilà mes assaisonnements. J'ai commencé avec sel et poivre. Dans ce cas-là, au lieu d'utiliser du sel normal, j'ai mis la sauce soya pour aller chercher ces aromates un petit peu plus asiatiques. Poivre noir, bien sûr. Un petit peu de graines de sésame pour ajouter un petit peu de croustillant. Et finalement, j'ai fini avec de la sauce épicée. Donc ça, c'est de la tabasco sucrée épicée. Mais n'importe quelle sauce épicée que vous aimez. Ça donne un petit goût épicé. Ça change la saveur un petit peu. Et c'est sûr, je vais goûter et rectifier l'assaisonnement au fur et à mesure que je prépare. Parce que chaque morceau de poisson va goûter légèrement différent. Il y en a qui vont avoir besoin un petit peu plus de sel, un petit peu plus de poivre. Il y a aussi le côté acidulé de la pomme et du jus de lime qui vont donner un goût, une acidité au plat et ça peut vraiment affecter combien de sel que j'ai besoin aussi. Donc, déjà, je trouve qu'il manque un petit peu de sel. So I'm finding there's a little bit of salt missing, so I'm going to add another spoonful of the soy sauce. And I want this a little bit more spicy, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the hot sauce. Now you'll notice that I'm mixing with one spoon, and then I will taste with another spoon. That's important. You don't want to use the same spoon you're tasting with in the fish. Alright, so now I'm going to take a little bit here, make sure I get a little bit of everything, and I'm going to drop that onto my tasting spoon. And that is better. That's got a nice little spiciness to it. Nice saltiness. So now, we're going to go and do the same thing with the other one. Donc on va aller faire la même chose avec le deuxième. J'ai mis tous mes assaisonnements ici. Donc la sauce soya, poivre noir, la sauce tabasco, les graines de sésame. Je mélange le tout. J'ai peut-être pas choisi mon bol comme il faut, donc je vais changer le bol pour pouvoir mieux mélanger. Celui-là est un petit peu large et pas assez profond. So I'm just changing my bowl because this bowl that I had the fish in originally is not big enough and it's not deep enough to be able to mix properly. So just so I don't make too much of a mess. There we go. Stir that up. So now this one is probably going to taste completely different because it's the different fish. It's the wild caught salmon, or tuna rather. And so I might need a little bit more seasoning in that. So I'm going to do the same thing, grab my tasting spoon. And that one definitely does need a little bit more of that soy sauce. And interestingly, I don't taste the acidity of the lime as much in this one, so I might add some more lime juice afterwards. That's another thing you can definitely adjust, is the amount of citrus that you put into your tartare, just so that you can have that nice acidity. Donc, je remarque aussi que, à part la sauce soya et la sauce épicée qui manquait, il me manque aussi un petit peu d'acidité. Donc, je vais peut-être rajouter un petit peu plus de jus de lime à cette assiette-là. Mais, je remarque que, entre les deux poissons, il y a une grosse différence en saveur. Donc, ça, c'est le poisson qui était élevé et ça, c'est le poisson sauvage. Donc, important à remarquer la différence. Je les mets de côté. Maintenant, on va faire la petite présentation. Donc, on range les garnitures, les assaisonnements. Les graines de sésame vont revenir sous peu pour faire la présentation. So I'm just going to put my stuff away. Just about ready to do our presentation. Move this board. Bring back that beautiful summer tablecloth. Yo, there we go. And our lovely bouquet of flowers. Here we are. Ta-da-da! Alright, so now for a tartare, you can easily do this on something like a cutting board, but we're going to change things up. We're going to do this on my plate. So I have a nice big rectangle plate that we're going to use for our presentation. And when you want to serve your tartare, obviously you're not just going to sit there and eat the fish. You're not just going to sit there and eat the fish out of a bowl, obviously. So you need something to serve it with. So you can serve with a nice little green salad. You can serve it with some crackers. So I have an assortment of crackers. You can also make a some little dried rusks using baguette. So this afternoon I used a day-old baguette which I toasted in the oven. So here is my baguette. Sliced up nice and thin, brushed with a little bit of olive oil and seasoned, and then put in the oven to toast. And that gets you these nice little toasts like this. So that's definitely one option. If you don't want to go through the trouble of making your own toast, or it's too hot, you don't want to use an oven, you don't have an oven, many different ideas. You can go to the grocery store and find a whole bunch of different little crackers and chips to be able to serve this with. So, for example, I have these crostini. So this is sea salt crackers, and they're nice little rectangles, and you can serve some on that. So we'll put some of those over there. You can also do tartare. So these are little round crackers, olive oil crackers, and a couple of those are always tasty, so you can do that too. Other options would be some rusks. So these are basically the same thing that I made in the oven, except they are store-bought. So we've got some nice squares of rusks like that. And if you prefer something a little bit larger, so if you're doing a full-on meal with your tartare, you could easily use a crisp rye bread. So those would work well for a nice toast. Donc, beaucoup d'options pour pouvoir faire le service de votre tartare. C'est sûr que vous n'allez pas manger ça tout seul avec une cuillère dans un bol. On veut quand même quelque chose de croustillant pour pouvoir le servir. Donc, on peut utiliser une combinaison de baguettes qu'on a fait griller au four. On peut aussi utiliser des petits craquelins, des taralis, qui sont des petits pains en forme de haut. On peut utiliser des biscottes, ou bien j'ai aussi des pains de seigle toastés qui marchent très très bien. N'importe quel croustillant que vous avez accès à avoir, si vous en avez à la maison, ça marche très très bien. Quelque chose quand même assez mince, assez croustillant pour faire une belle texture, un contraste en texture avec votre tartare. L'autre chose qui marche très très bien aussi, c'est des croustilles de pommes de terre. Donc j'irais plutôt pour des croustilles à l'ancienne. Elles ont une texture un petit peu plus solide qui vont se tenir quand même très bien face à le saumon. Donc the other thing that I would suggest serving with your fish tartare would be some old-fashioned potato chips or kettle chips if you have access to those. Something a little bit more high quality, something not too flavorful, so don't go for a flavor like barbecue or all dressed or let's name all the Canadian flavors. Something like a barbecue chip or a dill pickle chip or something like that. The flavor would be too much compared to the fish. So you want something like a sea salt or a plain. And none of those skinny chips. Nice solid ones. You can also serve a little bit of a salad. So I have a little bit of arugula here that I'm going to put on the side of the plate. This is a nice combination because it's got a nice peppery flavor to it. And so that works really well with the fish. And I'm just going to push these guys over. There we go. And so finally, we're going to do our nice little presentation. So the best way to do this, if you want to do a fancy restaurant style presentation, is to get yourself a cookie cutter. So a nice round one if you have it. And you're going to place that right in the middle of your plate. Donc, nous allons faire une belle présentation style restaurant, haut de gamme. Vous avez tout simplement besoin d'un emporte-pièce rond, donc pour faire des biscuits. Vous la placez dans la place sur votre assiette où vous voulez votre tartare. Vous allez remplir l'emporte-pièce avec votre mélange de tartare au thon. So you're going to fill up your cookie cutter with that tuna tartare mix. Yeah, absolutely. I want a cookie cutter. You could honestly use any shape you want. This technique works well with any shape. The round one is a lot easier to move, but I have done similar dishes to this with a fish-shaped cookie cutter, and so the tuna tartare was in the shape of a tuna. It's cute. But yeah, absolutely cookie cutter. You're going to press down on the fish with the back of your spoon. Donc, quand vous avez rempli à peu près à moitié, vous allez presser le poisson en place avec le dos de votre cuillère et vous allez tout simplement soulever l'emporte-pièce pour faire le beau petit rond de tartare au thon. Et pour finaliser, on va enlever le petit morceau ici, on va juste mettre un petit peu plus de graines de sésame sur le dessus. So just to finish that up, we're going to add a little bit more of those sesame seeds onto the top. And there you have it. Great for a super hot and humid summer day. Nice, cool and refreshing tuna tartare. Donc, parfait pour une journée chaud, humide, canicule de l'été. Vous avez mon plat de thon au tartare de thon rafraîchissant avec pommes vertes et avocat. So there you have it. Version number 2 of the fish tartare. Ta-da! I'll show you closer. There we go. There you have it. It's really nice. It's super refreshing. And it's really easy to make once you're able to start sourcing the fresh fish locally. So I hope you enjoyed that. J'espère que vous avez aimé. C'est un plat qui est quand même très facile à faire, aussitôt que vous trouvez un magasin qui peut vous fournir avec votre poisson pour pouvoir préparer vos propres tartares. Et comme vous voyez, la recette se change facilement dépendamment de qu'est-ce que vous voulez avoir comme saveur dans votre plat. Can I make tartare from quabs? So, if I'm comparing a quab to a crab, you can't serve raw crab. You would have to cook it. In that case, it would become more of like a crab cake or a crab salad. So it wouldn't work out the same way. This is really a dish that lends itself well to the raw fish, but there are definitely different kinds of raw fish on the market given the popularity of sushi. So you could definitely do this with the tuna, with the salmon. I noticed today at my grocery store there was some mahi-mahi that was available to use. I've seen things with yellowfin tuna as well. definitely different types of raw fish that can be used in this particular kind of recipe. So, did you see teeth mark on the monitor? Stop eating the monitor, guys. We're working on the smell-o-vision and the taste-o-vision for the next workshop. So, next workshop will be in September. It's going to be the 2nd, I think. And we'll see what I come up with, because I'm going to be traveling later on that same day, so I don't want to make 15 versions of, say, a bread that I then have to put in my fridge for a couple of weeks of time while I'm away. So we'll see what we come up with for that one. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of the summer festival, and I look forward to seeing you all around in the cavern. Donc, prochain rendez-vous, ça va être au début de septembre. Ça va être une recette fin d'été, donc probablement quelque chose avec les tomates. Je voyage plus tard dans la même journée, donc je peux pas garantir que ça va être quelque chose de trop élaboré, puisque je vais laisser les restants ici pendant que je suis partie. Sinon, je vous souhaite une très belle semaine avec le festival d'été et le Dinapalooza. Profitez-en pour écouter de la super belle musique. Et on se revoit bientôt dans la caverne. So, thanks everybody. Bonjour tout le monde.